Hey, I'm Emperor Palpatine. I'm gonna talk today about why the Star Wars sequels suck. Compared to the prequels and even the original trilogy, they're subpar at best. They just harken back to old things without actually faithfully recreating them or redoing them. And the only reason why they have any kind of following at all is based off nostalgia. Some terrible aspects are the fight scenes, the costuming, the set pieces, the story itself, the speed at which things go, how stuff is introduced, and so much more. Overall, the sequels are just subpar Star Wars movies and really not even that good of movies on their own. Whereas the prequels have amazing CGI, fight scene, ship designs. I think if anyone, I myself should be an authority on this, because not only have I been in every single film as the main villain or main character, I also have experience with every single character in the film, roughly. And this allows me to deliberate between the good representations of them and the bad. Starting off with the sequels and why they are terrible. In the original films, the original three from 1977, they had a clear plot and what they were trying to do. They had a good villain who was well written, a lot of celebrities who were like well known at the time, a decent story with a lot of worlds. The sequel has a recycled villain who's trying to be Darth Vader, but fails. Recurrences of only 3 of the original celebrities, who all end up dying at some point. Han Solo, Princess Leia, and Luke Skywalker. And the actor for Luke Skywalker even said that he thinks that his character is an unfaithful recreation in the sequels. They also really don't explain much that happened in between the original trilogy and the sequels, whereas from the prequels to the original trilogy, everything is explained effectively. For example, with sequels, they have Darth Vader's melted helmet, but that doesn't tell us how Kylo Ren got that, why he has it, and he always touches for it and reaches for it and gets like weird visions. That's never explained. The main thing with the sequels is nostalgia, right? If the original trilogy didn't exist, and the prequels didn't exist, and the rest of the Star Wars world building didn't exist, the books, the shows, everything, the sequels as standalone movies would be terrible. Don't have a clear sense of plot, and they only rely off references. So for someone who's seen every Star Wars movie since they released in theaters, right? Maybe they would be more enjoyable because you have that nostalgia. It makes you feel like a kid again. But if you've being able to see every movie within a short period of time, you really would not want to watch the sequels. They're just appalling. The sequels were heartless. So the only reason why they were even made was not to further the story, to further the canon, to better expand the universe, such as why things like the Clone Wars were made, or The Mandalorian, or something like that. But the sequels were exclusively to make a quick buck for Disney. So they had 2 directors, as opposed to just George Lucas. They weren't even consulting George Lucas on it. They had really terrible plot elements compared to the originals. In the originals, they had the Death Star. That was the super weapon. That was supposed to be the be-all, end-all. And then they started building another one and that got destroyed. That was supposed to be like the end of stuff like that. People should have realized, well, that's obviously a failed design, right? Big spherical ship that has a large cannon on it. Well, in the sequels, they start off with Starkiller Base, which they don't explain, and it must have just came out of nowhere, but it's effectively the Death Star, but on a planet. It, of course, gets destroyed, because that's what happens to the super weapons, and it just makes the First Order seem foolish. Like, they're supposed to be this high-tech organization that's like the Empire 2, they're supposed to be so much better with the new leader and stuff, and yet they pull the same stuff that the Empire did and executed worse. Starkiller Base is only fired once. Another person who isn't explained at all in the sequels is Supreme Leader Snoke, who is the direct parallel to me, of course, Emperor Palpatine. Whereas with Emperor Palpatine, they explain him, right? In the prequels, they show him as the Chancellor and how he even had a plan back then. Then they show him in the original trilogy as this nefarious bad dude, and then he comes back in the sequels. That was the bad and the ugly. Now let's move on to the good. The prequels were the best 3 Star Wars films, objectively. They did not rely off any prior knowledge. They explained effectively everything in their films to some extent, or their spin-off content did. They had the best fighting choreography, so like lightsaber battles, and arguably the best ship battles in any of the three trilogies. They also had the most celebrities in either of the trilogies, and had arguably the best villain, myself, along with a half and half good, half bad Anakin Skywalker, which was the main purpose of the prequels. The prequels really succeeded because the prequel celebrities were much better and more noticeable than the sequels, which had effectively none. They had Ewan McGregor, Natalie Portman, and Samuel L. Jackson, which were all huge names at the time, and arguably still are today. They don't rely off of just callbacks and references to old stuff. They have a new story. They have a huge world. They show like several planets in there. They go into a bunch of different subplots with the clones, with the Geonosians, with the Nabooians, all that stuff. They also hold the aesthetic correctly, whereas the sequels do not. So what I'm saying is any self-respecting Star Wars fan, or really human being, should vote for the prequels to be shown rather than the sequels. Oh, speak of the devil, here they are. Unlimited power!